What's going on, everybody, and welcome to my review of Superman 2, the sequel to Richard Donner's Superman. The movie was released in 1980 and is directed by Richard Lester. In this in-depth review, I'm going to be going into the plot of Superman 2, and I'm going to compare the theatrical cut of Superman 2, which was directed by Richard Lester, to the Donner cut. If you don't know the history of Superman 2, Richard Donner was fired after shooting 80% of the film as he and the producers weren't in good terms. After Richard Donner was fired, production became very difficult because of the fact that many actors quit. After Superman 2 released and got very positive reception, the new director, Richard Lester, was asked to come back to direct Superman 3, which I'm going to talk about in my next video, and he did a very bad job with the third film in my opinion. The first thing that I'm going to be talking about in this video regarding Superman 2 is, which cut is better? As I said before, there were two versions of Superman 2, and both are mildly different. There are certain scenes that are changed that do make the film better in the Donner cut, but ultimately, I personally prefer the theatrical cut. I have not seen the Donner cut until a year ago, and while I did enjoy it, it's not as good as the theatrical cut in my opinion. I might be biased, because I have a ton of nostalgia for the theatrical cut of Superman 2. But I think the theatrical cut is the cleaner version. Both cuts follow the same idea, but it has a better story, and it's also more complete as a whole. I do think that the addition of the scene where Superman talks to his father after he finds the green crystal is really cool, and it's a thing that is obviously an issue with the theatrical cut, but it doesn't matter because it still makes sense. The fact that they don't show it is annoying, and it's also an issue in the fourth film, but it isn't really a flaw with the film. With that being said, let's dive into the story of the theatrical cut of Superman 2. The movie kicks off with a montage of everything that has happened in the first film while the credits roll in, and it's just awesome. The effects look really cool, and the montage matches up perfectly with what happened in the first film, which is cool. After the credits, we see Clark Kent as he enters the Daily Bugle. He asks about Lois, and Perry White, who is the boss, tells him that Lois is in Paris where an attack is taking place. This is obviously an issue, as it makes no sense that the boss of a newspaper company would send the best photographer that he or she has to a place where the person could die. It's a very lazy way to create the villains for the film. So after that scene, Lois Lane is about to die. Superman rescues her in the last second. This is also a hole in the plot because of the fact that there was a scene in the first film where Superman reverses time using his speed. If he was faster than the speed of sound in the first film, why was he so slow in the Eiffel Tower scene in Superman 2? It's obviously a nitpick, but it has always annoyed me. After Superman rescues Lois Lane, he takes the bomb that the bad people had to space. I personally think that this is a really good way to release the villains. It's creative and it makes sense. After the trio of villains that we get in this movie escape from the prison that they've been in, they go to the moon where they kill 3 astronauts. This is such an iconic piece of the Christopher Reeve era of Superman films. I love everything about this scene. The 3 villains, who are Zod, Ursa, and Non, are extremely intimidating in this specific scene, and their lines are iconic. After the introduction of the trio of villains, the Daily Bugle sends Clark and Lois to the Niagara Falls, where Lois starts to suspect that Clark is Superman because of the fact that Clark wasn't present when Superman saved a kid. Lois intentionally falls to a place where she could drown to test Clark, but Clark is clever enough to use his abilities without being seen. This is a very good scene because of the fact that we see Superman as he barely uses his powers while still managing to help people. That's a scene that calls back to the famous quote, "Not all superheroes wear capes." Superman does wear a cape, but he didn't in that scene. After this scene, Clark and Lois sit in the hotel in which they're staying in, but Clark accidentally falls on a lit fireplace and he obviously isn't wounded. Lois sees that, and Clark reveals the truth. Then, he puts on his Superman costume and takes Lois to the Fortress of Solitude, which is the place that Clark built using the green crystal that he had found in the first film. When they get there, Superman talks to the artificial intelligence of his mother, Lara, and removes his powers by exposing himself to a red Kryptonian sunlight in a crystal chamber. This is a very nice scene. Not only because of the fact that it's very true to the character of Superman, it also sets up the final battle really well. Then, Zod and his cohorts travel to the White House and force the President of the United States to surrender. Clark and Lois go to a diner in Alaska, where a guy named Rocky hits Clark. After Rocky left the diner, the President makes a speech which was interrupted by Zod on the television. Clark realizes that the trio has taken over the planet. Zod challenges Clark to fight him. Clark realizes that he made a mistake, so he goes back to the Fortress of Solitude to find the crystal that could turn him into Superman again. This is a famous scene because of the fact that it's different in each cut of Superman 2. In the theatrical cut, Superman just finds the green crystal and it just cuts to the next scene, but in the Richard Donner cut, we get a whole conversation between Clark and his real father. I personally think that the scene makes more sense. In the Donner cut, Lex Luthor escapes from prison with Eve Teschmacher's help. They find the Fortress of Solitude, and Luthor learns of Superman's connection to Jor-El and General Zod. He finds Zod at the White House and tells him Superman is the son of Jor-El, and offers to lead him to Superman in exchange for control of Australia, which was his goal in the first film. The trio agrees, and they invade the Daily Planet. After getting his powers back, Superman comes back to fight the trio. This is an awesome action sequence. It doesn't feel dated, the effects were great, and it's so fun to watch. After a long battle, Superman lures the trio, Lois Lane and Lex Luthor, to the Fortress of Solitude. This scene is really cool, but it has one major issue. There's a short moment in the final battle of Superman 2 where Superman takes his Simaball and literally throws it at Non. It's easily one of the stupidest moments in this entire franchise, which says a lot because we had a fourth movie. After a short battle in the Fortress of Solitude, Superman uses the crystal chamber that takes away a Kryptonian's powers to take the trio's powers. After the trio realizes that they have no powers, Superman quickly kills them. After leaving the Fortress of Solitude, Superman takes Lois home. The next day, Clark uses his abilities to wipe her mind of the knowledge of her past few days. Later, he returns to the diner and gets even with Rocky. He also restores the damage caused by Zod's trio, and the movie ends with that. It's a great ending that was really cool. So overall, I love this movie. It's easily one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. I find it to be better than the original. It's just an absolute classic. I'm going to give Superman 2 a 9.8 out of 10. So what did you guys think of this movie? Did you like it? Was it in the middle for you? Or can you go as far as saying you dislike or even hate this movie? Comment all your thoughts. I would love to read them. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.